A mining giant is gradually moving away from Bitcoin. I'll explain what's happening in this video, and we'll also cover a lot of other major stories. A Hyperliquid ETF, a major Chainlink partnership, and updates on Cosmos and Aave. There's a lot to talk about today. Hello everyone, and welcome to CryptoRed, the crypto news channel. Let's start with Bitcoin, what's happening in mining and this major player that is clearly changing direction. We're talking about Mara, formerly Marathon Digital, the publicly listed US Bitcoin mining company. And little by little, Mara has started selling the BTC it had accumulated until now. New documents have just come out, and they show that Mara has sold around $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. At the same time, the company is gradually transforming itself into more of an AI infrastructure company than a pure Bitcoin mining company. Bitcoin miners have built massive data centers. They have secured access to a very large amount of electricity. And that is becoming extremely valuable today because of the AI boom and the growing shortage of available data center capacity for artificial intelligence. So a lot of Bitcoin miners are now repositioning themselves as infrastructure providers for AI, and more precisely as data centers providers for AI workloads. And that is exactly what Mara is starting to do. They sold $1.5 billion of Bitcoin, and as I said, they are increasingly moving towards AI. Now, does that mean they are completely abandoning their Bitcoin strategy? No, they are still mining BTC. In fact, they mined slightly more BTC this quarter than the previous one. But it is becoming clear that mining is no longer their top priority. For example, they have not really placed any major new orders for ASICs, the specialized machines used to mine BTC. That tells us they are not planning to aggressively expand the mining side of the business. They are still mining, but now on top of that, they're also selling Bitcoin. Until recently, the strategy was to accumulate as much BTC as possible, and that is now changing. And the AI narrative is something shareholders absolutely love. We're talking about multi-billion dollar deals, and that can be signed over several years. We are seeing more and more of this across the mining sector. Many miners have already shifted almost entirely away from Bitcoin mining and moved aggressively into AI. Mara is still somewhere in between right now. But in my view, little by little, the company could end up shifting very heavily, perhaps even almost completely, towards AI. And look at this point because it's very important. Mara says that around 90% of its non-hosted mining capacity, meaning the capacity it owns and operates directly, not the externally hosted part, well, 90% of this capacity could eventually be repurposed for AI and IT infrastructure. 90%. I don't know if you realize what that means. Imagine 90 less mining capacity being used for Bitcoin at Mara. That is huge. And this could become a real issue because we may be entering a phase where some miners simply stop mining BTC altogether. So the question becomes, could Bitcoin's hash rate actually decline? A falling hash rate is not a positive signal for BTC. Of course, the mining difficulty adjusts every 2 weeks, and if mining becomes more profitable again, older miners can step in. And that is how the system works. But still, this trend deserves attention. We need to watch what happens to the hash rate and more broadly, where Bitcoin mining is heading. Right now, a significant share of mining activity is located in the United States, with Foundry USA, for example. If many American miners begin shifting away from BTC, where does the mining power go? Does it move back toward China? Does it shift somewhere else entirely? So yeah, it's hard to know exactly where this is going, but it's definitely something worth watching closely. AI is really becoming a competitor to crypto on several fronts. A competitor in mining infrastructure, a competitor for capital, and also a competitor for talent. A lot of talented people are leaving crypto to move into AI. And honestly, I understand it a little bit because I love crypto, but I'm also extremely passionate about AI. And I do a lot of things with it. So in a way, I'd say it's kind of normal, but if you truly believe in crypto, and personally I really do believe in crypto, then you obviously shouldn't give up. You keep holding, and that's what I'm doing personally. Yes, of course, I'm very interested in what's happening with AI, like I said, but I'm not abandoning crypto, and I hope I never abandon what I'm building and doing and do all the things I do with cryptocurrencies. But I understand what's happening. I can see where this is going because investor interest in AI is absolutely massive. Just look at what's happening in Anthropic. We're not going to make a full video about AI here, but yeah, what Anthropic is doing right now is enormous. It could become one of the most valuable companies in the world, maybe even the more valuable than OpenAI. At one point, in fact, they even overtook OpenAI in valuation. It's pretty crazy. Their revenue growth is at an incredible pace, almost tenfold year after year. It's quite astonishing. They could reach $100 billion in revenue by the end of the year and potentially much more after that. Yeah, what's happening is really mind-blowing. And a huge part of that growth is being driven by coding. Developers are using AI coding tools to build software, and that generates a massive amount of money. It also creates enormous value for the coders because people can build new applications much faster than before. So yeah, that was the Bitcoin mining and AI part, but there's a lot more to cover today. Today we have the launch of the first spot Hyperliquid ETF in the United States. It's being launched by 21 shares, so they're arriving first ahead of Grayscale, Bitwise, VanEck, and the others, and the fees is expected to be only 0.3%, which is far more attractive than some of the existing options, especially in Europe, where certain products charge around 2.5%. So for people who want to hold hype, this is very interesting. Between 30 to 70% of the assets are expected to be staked, which should generate modest yield. Hype staking currently brings in roughly 2%, give or take. That's still meaningful because it could largely offset the management fees. So personally, I'm very bullish on this. Hyperliquid, you know how much this project interests me. They're doing a lot of very impressive things. They recently launched prediction markets, or at least they've started rolling out what they call outcome markets. And look at what else was announced. Grayscale has just updated its filling for Hyperliquid ETF. So that's progressing too. They will also be staking involved, and I think Grayscale's product could arrive in the United States in the coming days or weeks. And there's a lot of other good news around Hyperliquid. They've just announced that Phantom, the wallet that originally became famous on Solana and then later integrated Hyperliquid to let users trade perpetual futures directly from the Phantom wallet in a very simple way. Well, Phantom has generated $20 million thanks to that integration. I don't know if you realize how significant that is. In less than a year, Phantom generated 20 million through Hyperliquid integration. And this is where you really see the power of Hyperliquid. Hyperliquid is not only a place where people come to trade, it's also an infrastructure layer that companies, projects, and wallets can build on top to create entirely new products and revenue streams. Phantom could never have built a full trading protocol like this on its own. It would have been far too complex to maintain, to attract liquidity, and to operate at scale. Instead, they plugged directly into Hyperliquid, added their own fees, and took a share of the revenue generated by their users. From what I remember, it was roughly a split between Hyperliquid and Phantom, so 50-50 each. And yeah, it's huge. The core idea is simple. They add a fee layer and they capture part of the value created by the trading activity of their own users. It brings users to Hyperliquid, so Hyperliquid's customer acquisition cost is basically zero. And in the end, it's Phantom that brings in the users and creates value. It creates revenue on Hyperliquid. That revenue is then used to buy back the Hype token and burn them. And honestly, what's happening with this token is pretty incredible. There is so much going on around it right now. The next big angle I'm personally watching on Hyperliquid is the prediction markets parts, because I already mentioned before, they are slowly starting to arrive along with options. So with options, you could have things like, will BTC be above a certain price on a certain date or below that price? That means competing with platforms, I don't know, like Polymarket or derivative orders. And what is happening around this token, yeah, is very interesting. And still another news about Hyperliquid, Ondo has announced the launch of tokenized stock on the Hyper EVM, which is their blockchain, the layer 1 blockchain with smart contracts. So it is not directly on the main Hyperliquid application, it's on the EVM side, but it's a partnership with Layer 0, and you already know what I think about Layer 0. I have talked about it quite a bit, and I don't think it's secure. They've been hacked recently, but yeah, I just wanted to say it again, and I've got some news about Aave I'll talk about in the end of the video. That's it. I think it will have less impact, this news about the stocks, because it's good news, but it's not really, like I said, on the main hypercore, on the main application. Next, some news about Chainlink. Chainlink has just announced a partnership with the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, the DTCC. It's a major American financial service company that provides clearing and settlement services for financial market. It is used by a huge part of the trading industry. So this partnership is a very big deal. The integration will happen on the DTCC's app chain, basically kind of blockchain environment where Chainlink will be integrated to bring in data flows, oracles, and the entire Chainlink services will be connected to the DTCC's app chain. And once again, Chainlink is managing to sign a very impressive partnership with extremely well-known institutions. But as always, here's my warning when it comes to Chainlink. I think what Chainlink is doing is excellent. The way the protocol works, the Chainlink oracles, the integration, all of that is very strong. But in the end, for me, the Link token still does not capture enough value. There is a real lack of transparency between the money earned by the Chainlink company and the buybacks that they are being carried out. Because yes, buybacks have been happening for a few months or a year now, but we do not know what percentage of profits they represent or the revenue it represents. Is it 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%, 50%, 90%? We simply do not know. Chainlink decides to carry out regular buybacks, but we do not know how directly those buybacks are linked to the profits generated by the Chainlink protocol or the company. So yes, I would like to see more transparency from Chainlink, and I have already said it before, and I'm saying it again because it's important when you talk about the token itself. Next, let's talk about Cosmos. It has been a while since we discussed Cosmos. There is a good news for Injective. The blockchain Injective. USDC deployed on Injective will now become the official source of USDC of the entire Cosmos ecosystem through the IBC. What that means is that across the different blockchains in the Cosmos ecosystem, the source of USDC will now be Injective's USDC rather than USDC coming from Noble. Noble, and by the way, Noble had announced that they're leaving Cosmos in a certain sense because they launched their own EVM layer 1. So yeah, we can clearly see this happening right now. It means that dYdX, for example, will shift from Noble USDC to Injective's USDC. There will also be a buyback mechanism funded by the revenue generated from Injective's USDC. It will be Atom, the token of the Cosmos Hub that will be bought. So a portion of the revenue will be used to buy back Atom, but not Injective. But again, we do not know again what the percentage of the revenue will be used to buy. So if it's 1%, it's really negligible. Yeah, so this is why you always need to be careful with announcements involving buybacks. Whenever you see buyback, always ask how much, what percentage of revenue, of profit or profits, and especially can that percentage change later. On Pump.Fund, for example, they were doing more than 90% buyback, even close to 100% buyback, and then almost overnight, they started considering moving down to 50%. So this is important. The buyback mechanism is much more powerful when it's actually embedded in the code and cannot be changed easily, unless, of course, there is a fork or some major governance change. The way it works on Hyperliquid is more interesting. They have something like 99% buyback, and this is significant, and more importantly, it's not simply a company deciding every month what percentage it wants to allocate to buyback. It's in the code. And finally, let's talk about Aave and Arbitrum. The Kelp hack had a major impact on Aave. I told you about the $71 million that had been recovered on Arbitrum. A judge authorized, in a way, the transfer of those $71 million from Arbitrum back to Aave. But what I have now understood is that was not very clear at first, is that Aave does not yet have the right to redistribute those $71 million to users once it receives them. So the money may still remain frozen, this time on Aave's side, while the judge makes a decision and while there is a trial or while the legal case continues in the United States. There are people claiming rights over parts of that money, saying they are victims of North Korea-related hacks and that they should be able to recover some of those funds. Yeah, it's a complicated situation. But the key point is this. The $71 million are not simply about to be returned to users immediately. The situation is still far from resolved and those funds could remain blocked for some time. I know this story has been dragging on for several weeks now, but unfortunately, it may continue for quite a while. That is what I wanted to cover today across the different crypto news stories. I hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. All right, good.